Hey viewers, my name's Cara. It's day 7 of Vlogstice 2024. Today's theme is based on the letter I, and I chose for that to stand for introspection. Now I chose these themes all at once, not really putting a lot of thought into it. I just kind of let it come to me, I wrote it down, and that was the challenge that I gave to myself. So I didn't have a plan in mind for introspection, but I know that I thought of the word because this time of year, to me, is a very inward-facing time. It's a time that it makes sense to cozy up and go within. Introspection is about looking within, going within to oneself. But I realized when I started thinking today about how I wanted to approach this video that it might be helpful to have like a definition of introspection, because my way of looking at it is just going within, focusing inward, focusing on our inner thoughts, feelings, machinations, and I wasn't sure if that was the best way to describe it. So I looked up information about introspection. I found one of the various personality tests websites about introspection. So I'll link it in the description as a works referenced type situation. But it says introspection is an act of self-awareness that involves thinking about and analyzing your own thoughts and behaviors. It says that we replay our own experiences and actions in the hopes of understanding who and how we are. And it also goes on to specify, and this is the quote that actually showed up in my search result that led me to this page, that psychologists differentiate between two types of introspection: self-reflection and self-rumination. This is what made me want to include this information in the video and not just my own thought process on it, because that is very important to acknowledge that there are kind of at least these two different ways that people think about themselves. So the page goes on. Self-reflection is a positive form of introspection from which people attribute meaning and significance to their thoughts and actions, accept and learn from their mistakes, and increase their self-awareness. This is usually what I'm talking about when I'm talking about introspection. It goes on to explain self-rumination is the opposite. It is a negative form of introspection from which a person obsesses over their shortcomings, doubting themselves and their self-worth. And let me tell you, I do my fair share of that too. But when I'm talking about introspection in the sense of my spiritual path, if I talk about wanting to be introspective, I'm talking about that positive form of self-reflection. When I get into what they're calling self-rumination, the negative thought spirals and things, I don't even think of that as introspection. I'm not categorizing those negative thought spirals and obsessions and fixations as the same thing. So I thought this was very helpful to note. Because yeah, when we talk about it being about looking within, thinking about ourselves, thinking about our thoughts, feelings, and actions, sometimes that does mean looking back on something that we think was not great, and maybe we're fixated on playing back a situation and trying to figure out what went wrong. How did that situation go the way that it did? Why did it go so poorly? And when we start thinking of that, it can get really negative. It can be really doubtful of ourselves, of our worthiness, all of these things that it kind of mentions. But there's a positive spin to that too, because even though a lot of the time maybe I am looking back at an interaction or a situation that went poorly, instead of focusing on all of the things that are awful about what happened and how I'm awful because I allowed this and I did that and I didn't do that, or I said this or I didn't say that, there's the aspect of looking back on that same thing and going, okay, that did not go well. Why did it not go well? What was going on with me that impacted that? And how could it have gone differently? How can I do that differently in the future? How can I ensure that that doesn't happen in the same way again when it comes to me? Because we can't control other people. We can't control their feelings in a situation, but we can have an influence on our own, and we can know what we need to try to set ourselves up for the best way that we can approach a situation. So for example, if I have had a really negative situation, like if I'm having a conversation with somebody and I notice that I'm getting really irritated and I end up kind of snapping and being rude. It happens. Even if we're aware of those things and we try not to be that way, sometimes it'll just happen. But if I can then catch myself, ideally in the moment, and immediately be like, wait a second, I'm sorry, I don't like the way that came out. If I can know something like, I'm really irritated right now because of something that happened before I walked in here, and it's not fair that I just snapped at you because of it. Let me take a minute to cool off and come back. Or if I can know that it's something like, oh wow, I didn't sleep well last night. I haven't eaten enough yet. I am in an irritated mood, so therefore before we even have this conversation, I know that I'm already in like not a good spot, right? So to me, introspection is also teaching me those little tips and tricks of how to deal with myself. So when I know that if I haven't eaten yet, or if traffic was really bad on the way that I was just trying to get to where I am now, or if somebody is just talking about something that is a topic that is really close to my heart and they're being kind of flippant about it, they're being kind of rude about it, and I know about myself that people disrespecting a certain thing makes me irritated. Those are all things that I've learned about myself through introspection and through having various experiences that I then reflected on. So like, yeah, why was I such a bitch just then? Oh, maybe because I haven't eaten and I haven't slept and I have like a million things going on my plate. That doesn't make it okay. But if I can then figure out why it happened, I can, one, apologize for it with more specific detail and show that I realize these are the things that contributed. And then I can also do things differently in the future. So there's a lot of people who know about themselves that they don't want to be talked to before they have their first cup of coffee in the morning, or whatever, things like that. It's about knowing yourself, and it's about taking the time to get to know yourself by reflecting on both positive and negative experiences. Because when something goes really well, it's also worth looking back and saying, okay, why did that go so well? What about that worked really well for me? So when I think about introspection, especially at this time of year, I am a journaler. That's something that folks who have watched my channel for a long time know about me. I am a proponent of journaling. But even if it's not physically writing in a journal, I'm also a vlogger. I think there's a lot of people who like to record their experiences and thoughts in other ways. It might not be writing it down. It might be a voice recording. It might be a video log. That is what a vlog is after all. It might be writing a blog. So like typing more than handwriting. Maybe you're an artist or somebody who really likes to doodle, and so maybe you draw certain things about how your day's going, how you're feeling. Maybe that's a way that you process your feelings. I also know that there are people who struggle to put words to how they're feeling. Like some people struggle to name their emotions. So don't take me as the expert on that experience. I have friends who, there's a term for it and I don't remember the term, but I have friends who have told me about this, that they can think about themselves and their emotions and feelings a bunch, but they struggle to put terms to it. I don't know whether this would be helpful to folks in that position or not, but I have found some things online over the years that have had like a list of things about like, I was in a bad mood or I felt this way because, and it would have a list of things like, did I not get enough sleep? Have I not eaten? Have I not had time outside to get some fresh air? Have I not had loving physical affection? Or there are some that'll have actual like statements of feelings that you can kind of go through and be like, is that what I felt? So it'll say things like, I reacted this way because I felt lonely, I felt unheard, I felt disrespected, I felt angry, I felt sad, I felt disappointed, right? Because all of these things are different feelings, and there are many, many more. And sometimes people will make assumptions because maybe I'm irritated and I snapped a little bit in my voice. I had sort of a snappy tone. People will assume I'm angry, but maybe I'm not angry. Maybe I'm actually sad about something, but it came out in a snapping tone. And sometimes I don't know what I'm feeling in that exact moment, and it does take that, again, self-knowledge, something that I've come to through introspection, to know to say something like, you know what? I don't know what's going on with me right now. I actually just need a minute. I need a breather. I'm going to go take a walk, whatever it is, to know that that is what I need to help process and come back and be like, okay, I'm sorry about that. Or before I snap, if I feel myself starting to get to that point, because I know that when I start feeling certain ways, You know, there's a pattern that we can learn over time. So if I'm in a situation and I notice that I'm starting to get stressed, I'm starting to get anxious, and I don't want to start reacting in those ways at all, I can say, you know what, can we take a 5-minute break? I need to use the bathroom, whatever. And I can kind of take care of it before it gets to that point. Or the other thing that sometimes people will do that is becoming more popular in, I think, more current lingo is the vibe check. When somebody says something, especially if you're in community, it's somebody that you're friends with, that you're friendly with, that you work amicably with. So you want to be able to assume positive interactions, that nobody is meaning to be malicious. But somebody says something that's kind of fucked up, and you're like, whoa, wait a second. Sometimes it's like, did they mean that the way that I heard it? And in some of my communities, we will actually just ask, did you mean that the way that I just heard it? Or some people will say, can I get a vibe check? Like, what's going on? So introspection is kind of like being your own vibes watcher. And it takes practice. It's not something that everybody can just do easily. So like I said, I like journaling, some type of record keeping, so that even if I don't know what the fuck was going on with me in the moment, but I'm processing it and I'm saying all the things that I need to say just to myself, processing things that way. Or I'm also a big verbal processor. Who would have guessed? I've been talking to a camera for over 15 years. If I have a friend there, if I have a community member, if I have a mentor, whatever, if there's a person there who I can sit and verbally process to, and they just have to listen. They just have to witness. I don't need them to be offering solutions or anything. They're just to listen. And so sometimes I do that when there's not actually a person either. So it's the verbal equivalent of writing it in a journal would be either just recording it for myself if I want to keep it, or literally, who do I have on the desk here? I have this little cat. She's actually also a jack-o'-lantern. But for example, if I really wanted to verbally process something and I didn't want to keep a record of it, I could talk to this cat. I could. Or I could write in my journal. But I could verbally process it out loud to this cat, or to a houseplant, or to the wall, or to my cats. Whatever works if it's gonna help process. But as a verbal processor, I often have to talk through things, or for me, writing also works. So even if it's still words, but I'm not speaking them, going through the words does tend to help me eventually get to a place where I'm like, oh, is that what was going on with me? Interesting. Much more than just sitting there and thinking, but other people introspect differently. So again, to kind of wrap it up, what I associate with this season, again, I'm in the Northern Hemisphere, so we are in winter. We're coming up to winter solstice. So the days have been getting shorter. The dark hours have been increasing. That really, to me, feels like a time to go within, to stay inside or be inside more often, to have some hot chocolate and sit in front of some kind of warm place, be it a fireplace, a bunch of candles, or a radiator or an electric space heater, and just try to relax, read a book, have a nice conversation with somebody, maybe do some writing in my journal. While that is something that I feel like I should be doing and that all people should probably be doing all of the time, this time of year just really seems to follow that thread in the cycle for me. When it's warm outside and it's sunny, I want to do much more being outside, being with people, doing fun things, having outward conversations and more outward experiences. So all of these things happen all the time. There's balance in everything. But if I look at my personal cycles and I map them onto the cycle of the year, the times that I'm really energetic and exuberant are the equivalent of summer. And the times that I feel really I just need to go within, I need to take some space to myself, I need to think over what's been going on with me, that's the equivalent of winter and the dark and cold season to me. Also, coming up in the new calendar year, this is a time of year that a lot of people like to look back over their previous year, and that is introspection. If you're looking back at what are all the fun things I got to do this year? What are the challenges that I went through this year? How did I struggle? How did I overcome? Did I find any new interesting hobbies that are now like my favorite thing in the world? Did I read or watch anything new that I love? Did I read or watch anything new that I did not like? All of those things are also introspection. Although they might be about external things, if we're thinking about how we feel about them and how we've responded to things, that's introspection, I think. And I think that's quite enough of it for me today, so I will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching and or listening to this video. I'll see you next time, and until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye for now.